Welcome to a new episode of Review Rundown. Diving into the latest TVF offering, Gram Chikitsalay, a show that will feel familiar to anyone who's loved Panchayat but might not quite hit the same highs. The setup is pretty standard. A city doctor, Dr. Prabhat Sinha, comes to work at a remote village health center. Think of it like a rural version of your typical city slicker in a village story, with the same mix of humor, innocence, and the clash between rural life and city sensibilities. We've all seen this formula before, and in Gram Chikitsalay, that formula is, well, safe. The doctor, played by Amol Parashar, lands in Bhatkandi, a village that's more or less falling apart. The health center is a rundown space, the staff is dubious, and the whole place is on the brink of collapse. The show sets a tone of gentle humor with its quirks, like the local quack Chetak Kumar, who is more reliant on Google than his medical knowledge. And of course, the very real struggle of well-trained doctors who feel utterly out of place in these distant villages, battling not just poor infrastructure but also a rather indifferent system. But here's the catch. For all its charm, Gram Chikitsalay does not quite differentiate itself from Panchayat, the show that most immediately comes to mind. The village doctor learning life lessons, interacting with the quirky villagers, and facing slow, almost procedural obstacles, all of this feels familiar. The same kind of out-of-place humor that worked so well in Panchayat is here again, but it never really digs deeper than that. Instead, it stays in that comfortable space where everything is a bit too easy. The show never quite addresses the heavier issues surrounding the lack of medical infrastructure or the reluctance of doctors to work in rural areas. Sure, we get glimpses of these issues, but they aren't tackled head-on. Instead, we get more emphasis on the melodramatic side, particularly with the nurse's troubled family life. Now, while some of this does try to inject some emotional depth, it feels like a filler narrative rather than a substantial theme to anchor the show. In essence, Gram Chikitsalay is what you expect from TVF. A slow-paced rural drama filled with moments of humor but lacking the complexity that could have made it more engaging. If you loved Panchayat, you'll probably find this one to be an easy watch. But it's also very safe. The story does not challenge us or the characters in any meaningful way, leaving us with a sense of deja vu. Gram Chikitsalay might not break new ground, but if you're looking for something like a light, nostalgic escape into rural India with some comedic relief, this series might just do the job. Next, taking a royal detour to Rajasthan with the Royals, the new drama series that's got all the glitz and glamour that you'd expect from a palace-filled soap opera. But does it deliver on the drama or just leave us with more sparkle than substance? The Royals brings together two very familiar faces, Ishan Khattar as Aviraj Singh, the dashing royal heir, and Bhumi Pednekar as Sofia Kanmani Shekhar, a determined young CEO with big plans to modernize the monarchy. The chemistry between the two should, in theory, be sizzling. After all, a royal romance mixed with a good dose of corporate ambition sounds like the perfect setup for some drama, right? Well, not quite. The show certainly has the aesthetic down pat. The palaces are grand, the costumes are elaborate, and the jewelry massive. But for all the surface level polish, it's almost like the show is drowning under the weight of its own extravagance. Characters are often draped in so much opulence that it feels like the story is trying to tell us how luxurious they are rather than focusing on their emotional journeys. And while the royals navigate their relationships, their legacies, and the tug of war between tradition and modernity, the plot often feels a little too neat. We've got the classic rom-com beats, sparks are flying, they clash, they part ways and then meet again, of course, but the tension between Khattar and Pednekar just quite never catches fire. Sure, there's plenty of eye candy on display, Ishan's abs seem to have their own storyline, but beyond that, there's not much heat between the leads. This show also feels weighed down by its over-the-top secondary characters. There's a roster of princes and princesses, some with more complicated relationships than a Shakespearean drama, but they rarely do more than fill the background. The show wants to have it all. family drama, royal rivalries, and even a little bit of corporate intrigue, but it struggles to balance these elements effectively. But then there's also Zeenat Aman, a casting coup for sure, playing the grand matriarch. But even Zeenat, with her effortless charm, struggles to inject any real magic into the role. In fact, her presence almost highlights the series' biggest problem. It feels too safe, too polished. There's no real edge or bite to any of these characters, which is a missed opportunity, especially considering the setting and the premise. While the series attempts to explore generational tensions and the weight of tradition, it often falls back on tropes rather than pushing deeper. That line, "Do Graham the hell out of us," about sums up the series. It's clearly aimed at a younger audience, but it's trying so hard to be trendy that it loses sight of substance. It's meant to be quirky, but it just falls flat, and the cringe-worthy attempts at modern lingo do not help at all either. The supporting cast does offer some relief. They all do their best with what they're given, but in the end, it feels like The Royals is just about looking good rather than actually feeling good. So, should you watch it? Well, if you're looking for something light and visually stunning to pass your time, The Royals will deliver that. But if you're after something with a little more substance and nuance and sharp writing, this one might leave you wanting more. And finally, we head to a college campus where black magic, body swapping, and academic rivalries collide in Padakalam. Sounds wild, no? Sadly, this Malayalam fantasy comedy does not quite deliver on its promising premise. Directed by Manu Swaraj, the film kicks off with a quirky setup. Two college professors in a tussle for an HOD position, one of them dabbling in dark arts, quite literally, with a pachisi board that seems to be doing more than just killing time. Now, Malayali audiences are no strangers to supernatural concepts like Parakaya Pravesha, so the film wisely skips the heavy explanations, but that shortcut only works if you have a story worth following, and that's where this film fumbles. Despite strong actors and a few genuinely funny moments, thanks to Surat's signature expressions and Sharaf's smug charm, the film runs out of steam very quickly. The writing gets muddled, the fantasy elements don't build into anything coherent, and the jokes just don't land often enough. There are glimmers of what could have been: a tighter story, deeper characters, a better balance between silly and smart, but instead Padakalam feels like a missed opportunity, a clever concept weighed down by clumsy execution. So if you're a fan of the actors, especially Suraj, it might be worth a watch for the performances alone, but do not go expecting Ananda Bhadram meets campus comedy. That's it for Review Rundown this week. Stay tuned.